You have done this before, not with this specific person necessarily, but with this type, the one who is interesting and warm and present right up until the moment they are not, the one who makes you feel seen in a way that feels rare and then goes quiet in a way that feels familiar, the one who gives you just enough to keep you there and just not enough to make you feel secure. And somewhere in the background you have probably had the thought, why do I keep ending up here? Why does this keep being the person I'm drawn to? Why does the unavailable one always feel like the most interesting one in the room? This is not a character flaw. This is a pattern, and patterns have origins. They do not appear from nowhere. They were installed carefully and without your knowledge or consent long before you were old enough to recognize what was happening. This video is about that installation, about where the pattern comes from, about why emotional unavailability does not just feel tolerable to some people, it feels familiar, and familiar for the human brain is dangerously close to safe. Let us start with the brain. When you were very young, before you had language for it, your nervous system was learning what love feels like. Not what love is philosophically, what it feels like in the body, the temperature of it, the texture of it, the specific combination of feelings that arrive together when someone who matters to you is present and engaged. And here's the part that changes everything. If the person who was supposed to be emotionally available to you when you were young was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, sometimes present, sometimes gone in a way you could not predict or control, your nervous system learned something very specific. It learned that love feels like uncertainty, that caring about someone comes with the specific texture of not knowing where you stand, that the feeling of really wanting someone to show up is what love is supposed to feel like.
Not because anyone intended this, not because the person who raised you was bad, but because the nervous system of a child does not evaluate whether what it is receiving is healthy. It simply learns the shape of what it receives and files that shape under the category of love. So when you grow up and meet someone who is emotionally unavailable, something happens that is not logical but is completely understandable. It feels like home. Not because it is good, because it is recognizable. The specific combination of hope and uncertainty and working to be chosen, that combination is the one your nervous system learned earliest. It is the frequency your body was tuned to. And when you encounter it again in adult relationship, the recognition is so deep and so old that it registers not as a warning signal, but as a connection signal. This is called anxious attachment, and it is one of the most well-documented patterns in developmental psychology. The research is clear. People who experienced inconsistent emotional availability from their primary caregivers as children are significantly more likely to be drawn to emotionally unavailable partners as adults. Not because they are broken, because their attachment system learned to operate within that specific dynamic. Inconsistency feels like love because inconsistency was love in the only environment they had to learn from. But here is the part that is more specific and more uncomfortable. Emotionally unavailable people do not just feel familiar, they activate something. Specifically, they activate the same longing that was never quite resolved in childhood, the longing to be chosen, to be enough, to be the person who finally makes the unavailable one available. There is a specific psychological mechanism called repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to recreate early emotional dynamics in adult relationships, not to suffer them again, but to try to resolve them, to get a different ending this time. The emotionally unavailable person in your adult life triggers the same emotional state as the inconsistently available person in your childhood, and your system, recognizing the dynamic, reaches for the same hope it reached for then. Maybe this time they will choose me fully. Maybe this time the love will be consistent. Maybe this time I will be enough to make them stay present.
You are not pursuing unavailability because you enjoy suffering. You are pursuing it because somewhere very deep, you are still trying to win something that was never yours to win, still trying to earn a consistency that should have been given freely, still working toward a feeling of being fully chosen that you have been reaching for since before you could name it. And the cruel irony is that the emotionally available person, the one who shows up consistently, who does not make you work for their attention, who is simply and clearly there, can feel almost boring by comparison. Not because they are less interesting, but because their consistency does not activate the old longing, does not trigger the familiar urgency, does not feel like the shape of love your nervous system knows. Calm love can feel flat to someone whose nervous system learned that love is supposed to feel like effort and uncertainty. This is not permanent. This is not a life sentence, but it requires something most people would rather skip over. It requires learning to tolerate the discomfort of something that feels too easy, learning to stay with the one who shows up when every instinct says this is not the right kind of feeling, learning to question the pull toward the unavailable one rather than following it automatically. It requires, eventually, updating the nervous system's definition of what love is supposed to feel like, and that is slow work. It does not happen in a single conversation or a single realization, but it begins with exactly this, the moment you see the pattern clearly enough to name it, not to fix it immediately, just to see it. You are not drawn to emotionally unavailable people because something is wrong with you. You are drawn to them because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do, moving toward the familiar shape of what it was taught to call love. The work is not to stop feeling the pull. The work is to learn that the pull is information about the past rather than instruction for the present. What you were taught to recognize as love and what love can actually feel like are not always the same thing, and the distance between those two definitions is where all the real work lives.